Hi, everybody. Welcome to Legacy Stories. This is Maria.
And this is Coua. Hello.
Yay! We just did this and it was so funny because it didn't work. And now I'm like, is it going to work, Kua?
It's working.
Yes. Okay, good. And we're going to talk about food and health today. And not like food and health, but like connected food and health. And I'm kind of excited about this topic. As I wrote to you, Kua had this great idea, and I'm like, ooh, I don't want to talk about it, and I want to talk about it. And I'm like, in the end, I'm like, I'm kind of excited to talk about it.
So tell me about that let's talk about that for a little bit. Like, okay, what was like the turn off? Like what came into you, what popped into your head? And then what perspective helped you shift out of that? I'm curious.
Okay. So you know what popped into my head? I get very annoyed how it's like connected. It's like the thing that's being sold right now.
Mm,
Health is connected to food, right? That's what we're being sold right now. It's packaged very nicely
mm-hmm.
because it used to be like diets,
Yeah.
right? And now it's like no longer diets. Now it's like health.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of annoys me because it's like, okay, FYI, yes, food is part of the whole staying healthy way, but it's not the only thing. And it's definitely not the most important thing out there.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's what I kind of think. It's
Yeah.
just kind of like a part of the whole, you need to take care of your mental health, the stress levels, the exercise, the this, the that, like the genetics, hello, the epigenetics, the environment. It's not one thing. There's so much more there, and it's never being acknowledged. But health is because somebody benefits from it, right? Like the whole industry that's selling it is benefiting from it, and it's a huge industry. So yeah, but then when I thought about it, I'm like, okay, well, our point of view is as immigrants, and then I remembered like all the fun stuff that I growing up kind of like had with the health and food, right? And I'm like, oh, actually, I kind of want to talk about this. So I'm like, cool, let's start from like, do you want to say why you wanted to talk about how this came up for you today? How you just came up with the idea, or do you want to start with your kind of like history of food and health?
I want to start with why I threw that out there, and then we can go into like how we always do with every episode of what we learned growing up and then go from there. So I think this came up because that's really something that my health is something I'm focusing on this year. And like I've really been focusing on it. Like I've lost 3 pounds in a month and a half. Yay. And it's like that doesn't sound like a lot, but it's like, gosh, that's like a lot for me. Like if I'm a really small person. I'm 5'1". So 3 pounds, like, yes, it makes a big difference on my body. Like I feel it, right? Like in the way I feel, in how my clothes fit me, in my energy level. Like I feel those 3 pounds gone. Um, so yeah, it's because like I want to talk about health because it's just been so top of mind for me. And I feel like the way that I'm approaching it this time around, and I'm saying this time around because my health has been almost like a topic, a recurring topic ever since I don't know, ever since I was a young girl, like I want to say elementary age, like health has been something that has been, um, the word that's coming up is a concern to me, something that I'm worried about. And we'll get into that. But yeah, that's why I'm like, okay, let's talk about
Like,
health.
ooh, okay, that's interesting.
So top of mind for me. So yeah, let's go back a little bit to like how I grew up with health and food. Um, so thinking about my parents, everything was survival basically. So I feel like there was no such thing as healthy eating. Like they were poor, so it's like whatever they could get their hands on, what they grew, that was their food. And because they were poor, they didn't have a lot of like meat in their diet. A lot of their diet just consisted of grains, right? Like rice, and then the vegetables that they were able to grow. And that was their diet. And if they had enough money, then they had chickens and they could get a pig and maybe they could kill a cow. But usually those animals were like reserved for like the Hmong New Year. Okay, now we get a butcher a pig because we're celebrating something. And my parents really integrated that into our life too, I want to say, when we moved, when they came to the United States. Like rice, it's a staple. It still is a staple in my parents' house. And I feel like my history with white rice has come such a long way because I was taught that you just eat rice with every meal. Like that was the belief I had, right? So then like I would eat rice with every single meal. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I would eat rice. And it's like I didn't even know that it was like a bad thing, right? Like, oh, carbs, you shouldn't be having so many carbs. Like, it's not good for you. Like, I didn't know that. And it's kind of funny because it's like when I learned about that, it's like, what? That goes against like everything I've been taught. Like, it just felt foreign to me, Maria. Like, that's so funny they say foreign because it's like I'm in this foreign country almost. And then, like, these things that are being taught here feel foreign, you know, because like when you go to school, they're not giving you rice. And I never packed a cold lunch either. Like it was always hot lunch because there was really nothing for me to pack to go to school that you could just like that I could just eat without warming up. So I would say like that was one, we talked about this in Messenger, and that was one of the beliefs, right, that I had, like rice had to be eaten with every single meal. And I think that really connects back to why like food health became a concern for me, because when I started learning, they teach you at a young age about health, about like your health and the foods and the food groups, at least in this country they do. I mean, one of my daughters, she's 8, and they are learning about food. Like this is what you eat, this is what's considered healthy. So you are taught from, and I remember growing up like the food pyramid. I don't know if do you know about the food pyramid, Maria?
I know about the food. We don't, in our schools, they don't teach it, but I know from here what it is.
I think like it's now no longer a part of it, but then that's what like me when I was growing up, that's what was presented to us. Like this is at the top that you do sparingly, and here's what you do a little bit of, and here's what you can do more of, and the bottom is this, like your meals should consist of this. And it's like when I learned that, I that's when I think the concern started hitting, like, oh shoot, I'm like eating the wrong things. And then as you grow, then you just become like, for me, like I just became so aware of like my body and how it was changing through puberty, that food and health just became such a concern and worry for me, like front and center. I feel like that was something that I was very self-conscious about from a very young age. And that was, I feel like that was a mouthful, Maria. So I'm gonna let you go and share about like your experience growing up with health and food.
Okay, I want to comment on your things a little bit first. A few years ago, I would have been all over what you're saying. I would have agreed with every little like ounce that you put out there, because I was the person who studied it, who understood it, who knew it. And now it's like I've learned so many other things that I'm like, just like, it makes me it breaks my heart a little bit, right? Because it reminds me of my story too. And it's like, oh, this is such bullshit on the other hand. But, I'll go back before I get to where I am now. But we eat bread. My people eat bread with everything. Because, it's like for us, they had wheat and, grains, and they would make flour. And we are born to eat bread with everything, with every meal. And also similarly to us, when I was in puberty, the magazines, the stuff in the, on television and all of that, it was the similar story. So like You were in US, I was in a totally different country, but it was US propelled. It was not, um, it was all the studies, and it was all that it was bad for you, and I stopped eating bread and all of that stuff too. And for me, it was about weight. It wasn't about health,
Mhm.
but the way that it was presented is like you're supposed to be thin and you're not. So you need to eliminate these things because they make you fat. So it was the same thing where, like, growing up, I stopped eating bread. I stopped eating all sorts of things.
Yeah.
However, I come from a culture that, I don't want to say culture necessarily, because our country, like all the other countries, like you have more rural areas and then you have more urban areas, and the life is very different, or at least it was very different in rural areas where people were growing their stuff, right, doing their stuff, working a lot, versus like the urban areas. So yeah, my family comes from not having so much, so then to finally be able and to have something, um there was no good food or bad food. You just ate food because that's how my parents grew up, and then whatever they had, that's what they gave us, right? There's no good food or bad food. It's like, this is what you have and this is what you eat. And then I read all these magazines. I'm like, I don't want to eat bread, I don't want to eat potatoes, I'm not eating. You don't have a choice, because that's what you have. You're growing your potatoes. They make bread because bread is filling. That's how you can survive, right? It fills you, and you can eat it with everything. It's very much like, it's very for that region specific, right? Like all of the world, if you look back, we just, our regions, what we grow is what we can grow is what we eat, and we live off of the land.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people have gone through this, that it's like, and suddenly it became bad. Food became bad. And it's been bad since recently. It took me such a long time to make food neutral, on purpose to make it neutral. On purpose, not to have like a mental breakdown. Oh my God, such a horrible bad person for eating this piece of bread. I'm gonna ruin everything, right?
Yeah.
And I also used to celebrate every weight loss, like, right? Like you would get sick and you would lose some weight, and you would like, yes, I lost some weight. And I'm like, I don't give a shit. Because now, doing science and understanding how human body works, because when it goes in there, it's literally dissolved into right elements. And if you have a lot of it, it gets stored. If you don't have a lot of it, it's, specific things are used one way, the other things are stored, and it's just basic biology. It doesn't, like, food is not good or bad to me anymore. I don't avoid any food. I just understand that what my people have practiced for ages now, I get it. It's that, like, in moderation,
Mhm.
which for them, because they grew up and they just ate whatever was available,
Yeah.
it was natural moderation, because you never had one thing all year, right? You did not have an availability to anything a whole year. So whatever was available, so it kind of naturally regulated itself. So they always ate in moderation because they didn't have too much. They couldn't eat too much. They didn't have meat available a lot of time. They didn't have potatoes all year. They ate vegetables in the summer when it was hot, right? They did manual labor. They did, like, this was all natural.
Yeah.
But because we don't live that kind of a life and we want to control everything, and then there's all the industries out there, right? That are research. Okay, so I'm not saying people are doing this on purpose and anybody's evil, right? The scientists did research, they found some stuff, so they shared it with the world, right? And then of course the industries out there have tried to take, you remember when fat was villainized, so the fat was taken out of everything. Guess what happens when you take fat out of product? You have to add sugar to make it taste good. But guess what's worse for your body? Fat or sugar. Sugar is converted differently in your body and stored a little bit differently. But basically, it's converted again into fat and stored in fat. But it's not as filling as fat is. So it makes your blood sugar levels go differently. So I've done a lot of this studying. I'm not like a professional, I'm not a nutritionist, but because I was so irritated with it. And then I found out about health at every size. And people can be healthy and be bigger and all of, and it blew my mind. Because for 20 years, I believed all of this stuff. And then I'm like, wait. So it's like, yes, there's people who need to eat certain food for their body. Yes, we all know what's good for us, but I think what we naturally know what's good for us is ruined by being told that what's good for us is same for everybody. Look, here's the thing. Yeah, our bodies change. When I was not pregnant, I have eaten breakfast at work all the time. And what I found out is if I eat oatmeal, which everybody recommends, right? Oatmeal is really good for you. It holds me 5 seconds. I'm starving. Does nothing for me, right? So I ate oatmeal and peanut butter, which totally makes sense, right? It's protein, fat, keeps you full really long time. After my pregnancies, I could no longer eat the peanut butter. It was like it was not sitting well with my body.
Yeah.
So it's like I'm understanding, like, oh wait, my body has changed. My body needs something else. So now it's like, okay, so what can my body eat now that can hold me for like 5 hours, 4 hours, right? It's like, and somebody is gonna be like, oh, I need a snack in between or whatever. But the point is, like, our bodies know. And like you always say, listen to your body. If you really truly are listening to your body, then the weight is not an issue. Then what you're eating is not an issue because your body will not have you eat like this ginormous chocolate. It does not feel good in your body. And I know because I used to eat a ginormous chocolate, right? And in my culture, people don't eat ginormous chocolate because number one, when I was growing up, there was not that was luxury, and that is still luxury in poor countries that are not like, top 5 countries into the world. Everybody else is basically poor. Like you don't randomly buy this much candies and this much pop. People don't have it available like we have it here in US. So it's kind of like a unique problem that Western societies have. We have too much stuff available.
Yes.
And then we have to control ourselves, but then we're also told by outside sources what's good for us.
Mhm.
But really, you know what's good for you. Anyway, I feel like I've come a little bit full circle, but do you remember, except rice, anything else being like connected to health specifically? Any other food?
Mhm. Like I feel like rice was the biggest one and is still the biggest one. I mean, I feel like my oldest brother for sure, he still like needs to eat rice with every single meal. So I feel like that one is like very like it's so powerful, Maria. And I even know like other people who like just struggle so much with cutting it out. And I know it's because the belief is just so strong. And I think with what you're saying, like we get to choose, right? Like we're brought up a certain way and we just inadvertently like start modeling our parents because obviously they love us, so it's like okay, they know what's best. But once we get to a certain point, it's like okay, well actually I don't want that anymore. And I think the people that are able to break out of the health mold, right, like out of their parents beliefs, are able to get to that point of like, wait, I'm not my parents, I'm not my culture, and I get to choose what I want to do, how I want to live, how I want to eat going forward. I mean, I know that was like probably that is what helped me. Basically, like I haven't cut all rice out. Like I'll eat it if I want to. Like I always know that, but on a weekly basis, I maybe eat it like once or twice. And I know that it's because I've really solidified the belief like I get to choose what I eat. Like that just feels like super empowering for me. And I love knowing like I'm in control. And I think with the whole rice thing, it just feels, it's almost like so out of our control. Like this is, here it is. Like here it is. Of course you're going to choose this. Like, I don't know. I think I know it's like definitely like a mind over matter type of thing. And the mind, I mean, you know this, how powerful our minds are. But you also know that you talk so much about rewiring. And I think it's that part that people need the bridging the gap for, right? Like they can't get over like that hump to start rewiring.
Well, I want to go back to, do we even need to do it now? Look, majority of Asia eats rice with every meal. They're doing quite fine with their health and with their age. They're not doing much worse. I think obesity wise, even, they're doing much better than US and the Western countries.
I think what the problem is though is that we have Asian culture has modernized. We're not before, yeah, it was fine if they're eating rice because guess what? They did much more physical work than we do today. They were working in the fields. My parents were working in the fields. They had to walk to their garden. They did so much more physical activity that, of course, the rice, it's like it didn't matter. But in today's society, yeah, it does matter because guess what? Most of us are just sitting for like the bigger part of our day. So that is why it's like, yeah, now you actually need to start reconsidering your diet choices because your lifestyle has changed. You are not living your parents' life anymore. You're not doing that work that they were doing. So yeah, eat your rice, but it's like you have to be able to recognize that you're just living a different life.
Yes, yes. But there's one more factor that's very important. They did a study a couple of years ago. Actually, it's been quite a couple of years ago. I don't remember where now, but I really like that study. They studied people who did what are known as like high stress, high demand jobs, like doctors, lawyers, like very demanding jobs, like hours wise and everything. And what they found is there was a group of people who considered their job stressful. And then there was a group of people who just considered their job a job. They
Yeah.
like did not find it stressful. It was just how their job was. So they all work in the same field, but health-wise, the people that had health problems were the ones who believed that their work was stressful. It wasn't the people who all over did the job, but it was the ones that believed. And I think that's the factor that when we start believing that the rice is bad for us or that the bread is bad for us, that's what happens. But guess also what? Europe as a country is like as a continent, as a country. My we eat bread, like right? Italy is also like we eat bread on Balkan with every food. Italy is like a bread country. France is a bread country. We certainly love our breads in Europe. Like all of the Europe, Poland is like a bread country, fried bread country, fried dough country. So it's like they don't have issue with bread because in them, for them, bread is not a problem. If you ever like ask Italian women or French women like how they just keep saying, oh, just moderation, which means they're not gonna sit there and eat a whole loaf.
Yeah.
But I think that comes from that that sense that it's not the portions are a little bit different, right? How things are sold is a little bit differently packaged. So it's not like here, so much, so much, so much, so much. And I think it's same kind of in Asia. At least I don't know. I haven't gone yet. I would like to go. But when I look at the shows, they don't get these big plates like we get them here.
Like
It's
large, like super size everything, or like buffets where you can eat like mountains and mountains of food. Like I'm sure they have buffets, but it's like, yeah, I totally get what you mean. Like the portion sizes are so different, and what you said, well, like it's their belief, and that is what it is. Like if you're thinking that it's bad, then of course it's going to be bad, and then of course that's going to have an effect on your body, and I think that is what it goes back to.
But here's the funny thing. If you think it's bad, right? You're like, I don't want to eat it. But then your body has eaten it all of your life. So guess what's going to happen? You don't want to eat it. Then you're going to overeat it, right? And this is how I think this is what I've done. This is how I've gained weight because like, this is bad for me. I shouldn't eat it. And then I would eat mountains of it because when you rebel, then you'll just go for it. And it just makes this vicious cycle. And I swear that's how I gained weight because I was like, I should eat this food. And of course you're starving. There's not much available. There wasn't like gluten-free bread, blah, 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 diet food back home. That's how I started getting into cycle where it's like, you're trying to lose weight, but I was just happy that I had a sane enough father who, without any science background, knew how to tell me that if you keep doing this, what your body does is when it runs out of nutrients, it starts pulling them from the other organs, which he's totally scientifically right about. It pulls them from your bones if you're missing stuff. It pulls them from everything else. So it's your body starts breaking down because you're missing nutrients. And he told me that.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, fuck.
Can't do that anymore. Yeah.
Right. And I kind of like it rained me down, but that vicious cycle stayed for me where it's like, oh, I should not eat chocolate. Guess what I'm going to think about and want to eat the whole day? Chocolate until I eat it. And then when I do eat it, I'm going to eat too much of it. So, like that restriction cycle, I think that when we label foods as bad foods, many of us just like then get into that vicious cycle when we rebel against ourselves and like actually overeat. And that's how we end up gaining weight. Not because the food is bad for you, but because you're overeating it. It's not like, oh, I want to have a square of chocolate. Oh, good, whatever. I eat my chocolate and I walk away, right? Like, but if you're thinking about, oh my God, I want chocolate so much, but I shouldn't. Oh, chocolate's bad for me, but I shouldn't, da da da. Then you end up in that. And I think the fact that labeling foods as good as bad, I know that's how scientists came up with it. That's what government put up as like official stuff. That's what, companies used to make this is good, this is healthy. I'm not saying like, oh, this is an evil scheme, but that's what happens. And we don't know this stuff until it happens. Sadly, we can't predict it. But now we do. But now it's switched from like, skinny is good to like, oh, healthy is good. So they've just changed it, and that's like a little bit agitating me right now because there is a lot of people at different sizes who are really healthy. But going back to healthy, I want to go back into cultural stuff. I remembered with my people, they will go to a doctor, but because, doctors are kind of like gods, but they don't really 100% trust him because they're not educated enough in the past in the medicine, right? So they'll kind of do what the doctor said. But if there is some kind of home remedy, if you could eat something, slather something on, make a tea out of something, they're always going to choose that. I remember being a kid and there was this thing about beets and eating beets. And my mom was making us eat beets because it's good for your blood. Because I'm sure somebody got healthy and the doctor suggested beets as one of the, so because right, we didn't have beef or, spinach and all that stuff. But I know they were pushing spinach and they were pushing beets because it was good for your blood. They didn't understand what actually biologically happened, because we know today, right? When your iron is low, that's the foods that are suggested. But they didn't know, but they knew enough to like really hang on to those foods, even though sometimes they use them inappropriately.
Yeah.
Because if the doctor said that's good for you, they're like just went for everything. So my mom made this rice water whenever we were sick, right? Because basically, like cooking water with rice, like it was basically getting out the electrolytes and all of that. It's like Pedialyte today. But the thing is, it's like they adapt it and then they just, right? Like all those home remedies with food, like um onions, like using onion to pull out of infection, which is, using a tomato, using cabbage, using like they knew these things. And for me, some of the foods, first, I was very annoyed when my parents did that. I was like, oh, this is itchy. I hate this. I don't like this. And then later I realized they're just doing what they know because they feel very bad when I'm sick and they're just trying to help, right? But food and health had a totally different kind of growing up for me, different meaning when I was smaller versus the meaning now that it's like, oh, the food that you eat is healthy or not. Then it was like, oh, like this is the healthy food. They either read in a book somewhere, somebody told them, and then they like really were like pushing you to eat it because that was good for you. You really should eat that. But above all, my dad always says you should just eat, because they grew up in poverty and they didn't have enough food, right? It's like you should eat, because what if there's no food? Then you're solid. Because here's the funny thing: if you get cancer, chemo is very draining. You do not eat food, right? If you're a little plumper, it actually helps you in the long run, right? And thinking about it, people used to have cancer and not know that they had cancer, right? So I'm like, oh, this is so interesting. Looking back at how things fold, it's like they knew everything we know today. They just did not know how to explain it biologically. Okay, I said a lot. Say something.
When you're talking about like food and sickness, like that really struck a chord with me because we also like have ways to remedy it with food. Like my parents would always make like it's called gori, and basically that is just rice boiled with water. So then it becomes like this like gooey mixture, and you would just eat that. And it, I don't know why, but it always helps, right? Because it's so bland. And I don't know about you, but like when I'm sick, I don't want to eat flavorful foods. I really want to eat bland stuff. And I really also love eating like hot broth type foods when I'm sick. And so my mother-in-law, whenever we're sick, even to this day, we're adults, like she will boil a chicken with herbs and she'll like make that and then she'll like tell us to eat it. And it's like, oh, that feels like so good. And so like I mean, I don't know if it really works or not, but it feels good to my body. And as I've grown, I've noticed like just the listening to my body, tuning into my body, like I respond very, very well to hot foods, to soups, to even like hot water. I've changed my water habit to now only drinking room temp or hot water. And I love it. And when I was younger, it's like, nope, only cold water. But now as I've gotten older, I'm like, I just love eating hot foods. Like there's something so comforting about that. And my body responds very well to that. I digest food a lot better when it's warm. And the other thing I've noticed about myself too is um, I actually do not tolerate meat well. And I never like wow I never knew that, but once I started listening to my body, started tuning into my body and actually started experimenting, I've noticed that when I eat less meat, like I just don't have as many cramps, I don't have as many digestive issues. So I think that I'm pointing that out because going back to what you're saying about learning to listen to your body, I think that's what a lot of people in society are missing. Like they're not taking that time to actually get quiet enough to get to know their body and what it needs. Because you're right, like your body is basically going to tell you, like, yep, keep eating this, or stop. You don't need to eat anymore. Like, do you know what I mean? And I think that that is why, yeah, you can eat Cheetos and you can eat chocolate too, because your body will take all of that, but it can only take so much. Like if you're going to eat it to the point of you feeling sick and that's the only way you know that your body is now like kind of rejecting it, then you've kind of missed the whole point here. Do you get
Oh,
what
yeah.
I mean?
After when I met my husband, I could not understand that man I was so frustrated over him. He'd be like, I'm done. His plate was not clean. He had so much leftovers all the time. He only ate like white chocolate in like a square at a time. He's like, oh, this is all I need. And I would we started living together and I would buy this like, or make cookies or buy ice cream or something. He would never eat it. He's just like, man, I don't feel like it. I'm like, what is wrong with this man? I was frustrated with him. The fact is, like, he was very good with listening to his body. He knew what he wanted. He knew when he wanted it. And I did not. All the diets fucked me up to a point that like I was constantly trying to eat what I was supposed to eat, that I never listened to my body. And then I constantly was wanting to eat something else and then binging on it and like messing it up. So when I started my work, and it was actually Kara who, when I first heard her talk about this stuff, I was like, what the hell is this woman talking about? She scared me so much. I did not want to listen to the podcast. And but she started talking about it and slowly, it took me like a year to slowly inch by inch understand what she's talking about, health at every size, how it's actually not, but the foods are not, it's not, the foods are not bad. How it's like, what we're thinking about foods, how much it's all of that stuff. It took a while to her. And now I can tune into it and be like, I'm done. I'm full. I don't want to finish this. I don't want to eat this.
Yeah.
I don't feel like eating chocolate. Like you could put as much chocolate in front of me now. I'm such a chocolate snob. It's very weird. But also I understand when it's like when my period is coming on, like I have munchies. I want to eat. I need to eat. I need to and and it's such a relief not to think, oh, am I going to gain weight or not? Because for such a long time that was an obsession. That was like constant thinking.
Yeah.
It's just like no, I feel like eating this, okay. Because I know I won't feel like eating it forever. It's like I feel like eating it for 2 days, right?
Yeah.
And then I also learned this in pregnancy because my pregnancies were very, I wouldn't say difficult pregnancies, but I could not eat food unless I really, really wanted it. I was nauseous the whole day. So I literally had to sit there and be like, what can I think about and not want to throw up? That's how I chose my food. But that kind of allowed me to tune into my body to be like, oh, okay, so that's what I want, right? So it was so natural, it was so cool. But I finally know what you're talking about. When you do listen, when you do hear, they say in this country, they like call it intuitive eating. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
when you didn't buy bullshit as you were growing up and you didn't mess up with your eating or nobody else messed up with it, that's how you grow up naturally, right? If nobody told us you should eat this or you shouldn't eat this, or you're fat or you should lose weight or you should gain weight, a lot of my friends are like, we were skinny and they made us eat all this food and we gained weight, right? Because their parents were worried that they were too skinny or whatever. So it's like if nobody messed with us, naturally, if we grew up, we'd be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. But
It takes
because
us years to learn how to do it though.
but it's because like that's not really the case for anyone because there's just so much noise. I think that's why it's just so important, like the work that you're doing as a coach and like other coaches, like just really teaching people that they can get basically control of this, like get in front of it. Like it doesn't have to be that way of like continuing to listen to those voices. Um, okay, you were saying something and I want to say this. The whole like thing about like food and like the intuitive eating, like what kept popping up into my head is like, yeah, like you can trust yourself with food. Like you can trust yourself with food, like that eating one Cheeto is not going to do anything. Eating the chocolate bar is not going to do anything. And I was thinking about this more as I was just sitting here, like listening to you. And I'm like, you know what? Food, the relationship with food is so much like the relationship with money. Food is abundant and it's always there. The same thing with money. But when you learn to like develop that relationship and learn how to like flourish it and to love it, that's when you really like start to gain the benefits, start to see the return on the investment. And I mean, I'm saying this because I feel like I'm finally experiencing that with like food myself. Like it's taken me so long to get here to a place where it's like, oh my gosh, yeah, I trust myself with food. It's like, yeah, I can buy the Cheetos and eat them and know that I'm not gonna like eat the whole bag in one sitting. And know that and trust myself, like, yeah, I'm only gonna eat until like I feel satiated and I don't have that urge to keep going anymore. And I feel like a lot of women have that problem. Like, I mean, I know I did, like just the like, oh my God, I have to eat it all. And maybe that probably does have to do with like our upbringing, right? Like being immigrants, like it's gonna run out. I think that is probably in my cells somewhere, like that, just that thought process of like, shoot, if I don't have it now, like I'm not going to be able to get it later. And I think that's the same thing that happens with hoarding, right? Like I have to have this in case I might need it later. But here's the thing with food too, like going back to like the food isn't good or bad. What if we just thought like food is good? Like that as a blanket statement, because that Snicker bar is sure good when you have nothing else to eat and you're starving. It's gonna do your body some good.
I always say, for me, the closer to the ground, the less processed, the better, right? But if that's what you have, that's what's available for you. And then again, if you don't believe it's bad for you, it's not gonna do as much damage as when you do. So yeah, I don't know. I I love this topic. I'm passionate, and it's like so many ways to approach it. Like there's always like desire, like these foods that are very processed actually are made, just like TV shows are made to want us watch them. They're a little bit like concentrated and they produce this, they give you this dopamine hit, like all that sugar and you want it more. And it's like there's all these angles you could approach this from, right?
This
Like,
is a real thing.
oh
Yeah.
my goodness. But
Sense.
being an immigrant for me, it's like I just want to enjoy food because that's how I remember it, like from the earliest days.
Mm,
Like the fun, like eating was fun.
yeah.
Having meals with your family was fun. It was, and like special days, making special food to eat. It was fun. I want to like embrace that food from back home and I want to like enjoy that. And it's just like, yeah, and
Yeah.
I want to experience food of the world because guess what? Here we can experience food from everywhere.
Yeah.
Blows my mind. I love that.
That is like really hitting me so hard, Maria. And that's something that I'm like trying to practice more of, just like enjoying my food, because I'm a fast eater. And as for as long as I can remember, I've always been like a fast eater. Like hurry up, get it all done. But now
PR dog.
enjoy my food, like really, like every taste, every bite, like really satiated. Like no matter what I'm eating, I just want to be able to enjoy my food. And I feel like when you do that, it's almost like it lasts. It gives you that, like, I don't know how to say it. It's like like that aftertaste. Like you get like such a satisfying aftertaste. Like, oh my gosh, like that was so good.
There's nothing better than sitting with a good company and having like a bite and talking and
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
And it's like this is the thing. It's like it doesn't. What I've also learned is that when you're in a diet mindset, you're thinking every day has to be the same, right? When you get on from under it, it's so interesting how it's like, oh, like I can have a rush meal today. I can eat fast food today. I can have like a salad. Like there's no like has to be. It's like your food, your whole life stops revolving around food.
Yeah. Yes.
And your food is there to like nurture you. And it's like can be so enjoyable. And it also can be just a sustenance. It's like I literally eat breakfast just to survive. Because it's like I need breakfast. I need breakfast. I don't need brain fog, right? It's like food is so good, but also it's so not important as much as it is. Oh,
I think what you said there is just so important, though, and I really want our listeners to hear this. Like, if your life revolves around food, then that's like such a clear sign that the food is in control of you. Like, that's what's in control of this situation here. Because, like Maria said, like you're still gonna keep on living, like despite the food being there or not. Like you're gonna like keep going. So I
yeah.
think if you could see that, like if you're constantly thinking about food, like that's something to really just look into it. Like give that, I don't know how to say this, but just give it center stage. Like it deserves that attention. I think for me for so long, I'm an avoider, I'm a resistor. So I would just like push it away, but then it like kept persisting and persisting and persisting. And I think it was really when I finally like just let it take the stage, and it's like, okay, now I have to look at you, and I'm going to start doing something. Just something. Do you know what I mean, Maria?
Well, you have to become aware of it first. For
Hmm.
me, it was like, what are you talking about? This woman is so scary. What is she talking about? Right? Like, and then like the whole, you have to let the reins go. You have to stop trying to control food in order to gain control of food. Just like anything in your life, it's
Felt
like
so
I have to, right? I had to stop worrying about what I eat, and I just ate whatever I wanted. It's just such a weird experience. It's like because yeah, but the best thing is I think I was able to start my business because I've released so much of the food drama that I had the brain energy and brain space to do it. Because I stopped thinking about exercising, dieting. What am I going to eat? What am I not going to eat? Am I going to start a diet? Am I not? Da, 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 da. Should I eat this? This is da, da, da. All of that thinking. When I released that, I was like, oh, look, I have all this space and all this time. Look at all this brain energy. I could do stuff now. I was just like,
I have like that same experience, and I feel like I'm living that now. Like I like to prepare my food because then it's like I don't need to think about it. And it's like, oh, yep, this is what I'm going to eat. And the same thing with exercise, like I'm playing around with this. So typically I always work out in the morning, but today I didn't want to do that class. So then, yeah, I put on my workout clothes, but I haven't worked out yet. And it's just like, I'm just listening to my body, like, well, I haven't worked out because I really don't feel like working out yet. But I also know myself that like sometimes I like to work out in the afternoon because the afternoons I like sometimes I'll get that burst of energy. Like I didn't get ready, like get dressed like this until right before our call. But that felt like so good to me. Whereas like I was doing my work, like my business work in the morning, and then I knew I had this call with you. So I'm like, okay, I want to get ready before I hop on with Maria. And then I was thinking, like, you know what? I think after that, I always have like a burst of energy after you and I talked. I'm like, I think the workout after that would be good. But all of it, like it goes back to really learning to tune into your body. Like I would have not known any of that if I was out of touch with like my body. I would have just been on my, because I'm a type A, I would have just been like routine. Da 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 da. But that's not how our bodies work.
No. And I would have made a plan and then felt, because you feel you're doing the plan for the wrong reason, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't, when you're not working on your mindset, you can't follow through with the plan. And I would have then like skipped the plan and felt horrible. So then eaten because I would have, I would have done the circle where like, you create the bad emotion.
It's like your thoughts lead you to your actions, Maria.
I know. Isn't that interesting? Okay, Coua, what do you have? Because this is running longer. What do you have to add? Do you have anything else to add?
Oh my God, I feel like I could go on and on and on, but I just want to add like this is such an important topic because if you don't have your health, like you don't have anything at all. And I really believe in that, like that health is wealth. I mean, just think what if you're sick, you can't do anything. So if this is just hitting any chords with you at all, like I just challenge you to really look at this in the face, like once and for all. Like take care of it because you're worth it. You have one life, you have one body. Like truly take the time to get to know it and to take care of it.
Yes, and all of it. Not just like, oh, I weigh this much. Oh, I should be bigger. I should be smaller, whatever.
Mhm.
Look at all of it. Like truly
Yeah.
assess yourself.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for watching and for listening.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.